Hey guys, it's Sarah from Just My Typewriter, and today I want to talk about typewriter advertising. Now, typewriter advertising is a way that I like to do historical research about the machines in my collection. There are scans out there, there are resellers who have tons of these ads that would have been in magazines, print ads that would have been hung up different places, but I find all of these resources are really helpful when trying to determine specific functions of a machine, what things are called, the names of the colors that the machine is in, and it's really helpful to kind of do a deep dive in your specific model. And I've done quite a few videos featuring typewriter advertising before, and one of the advertisements that I've always found a little bit creepy when doing research on typewriters is the Underwood Golden Touch ads. Now, this is a line of ads from the 1950s into the 1960s that feature golden gloves, disembodied golden gloves, using typewriters from the Underwood line. And this was kind of their differentiating factor. They had the Golden Touch machines in their line, or the Golden Touch features on the machines in their line. So if you look at some of these advertisements, I find them just to be generally pretty creepy. They're these golden opera gloves that are not attached to anybody, typing on a typewriter, and often these ads also feature a woman who's also looking at the typewriter. So I wanted to do a little bit more research into what actually is the Golden Touch, and why do these ads make me feel so strange about it. What's really difficult is my notes are on my phone, but these gloves don't work on my phone. So Underwood is a typewriter company that was established in about 1895, and the first products they made were actually carbon paper and ribbon for the Remington typewriters. And once Remington decided to start manufacturing their own ribbon, Underwood started to make their own typewriters. Now, the Underwood Model 5 is probably one of the most popular Underwood models that was out there. Between 1900 and 1920, they sold about 2 million Underwood 5s. And those are gorgeous machines that have a lot of gold outlining on them and etching. And they also made other models as well, and eventually they made portable Underwood machines. Now, what I find interesting about Underwood specifically is they have some very interesting advertising tactics. In fact, at one point, they made the world's largest typewriter. It was like 14 tons, and that was in Atlantic City for a while and eventually was scrapped during World War II. Between 1959 and 1963, they completed a merger with another typewriter brand, Olivetti, which is also super hyper-focused on the design of the machines in their collection. So Underwood is a pretty popular typewriter manufacturer, and I have had some Underwoods in my collection before. I have an Underwood 6, which is a standard typewriter from like the 1930s. I love this machine, it's great. Really easy to remove the carriage on this machine, which I appreciate. And then I've also had some Underwood portables. I've had an Underwood Universal maybe I've had 2 Underwood Universals. I can't remember. They both looked the same, but one of them was shiny and one of them was crinkle paint. And then I've also had my Underwood Golden Touch Deluxes. I've had 2 of those really gorgeous machines. I think these are just like the most beautiful looking typewriters, but I did eventually rehome both of those machines. So I've had some experience with Underwoods, and as I had these experiences, I would go through and look at the advertisements from these machines and try to figure out what features were specific to the Golden Touch. Now, we've looked at some ads from other typewriters before. The Smith Corona 5 series, I looked at a ton of advertising to figure out the differences between the models in their line. And what I found about the Golden Touch is it's not advertised on any one specific machine. It's kind of their blanket advertising statement across all of the models in their line during the 1950s and 1960s. A lot of these advertisements describe the feel of an Underwood machine and how it feels typing on it, and they say it should feel like you're using magic gloves or wearing magic gloves while using the Underwood. And the idea here is that it's a really light feel. In an ad from 1956, they mentioned the keys should have a super responsive touch, fast margin setting, and tabs that work in a normal typing position, so you don't have to really stretch too far to hit a tab key. In this ad from 1958, they mentioned that you'll type 26% faster than you would on any other machine, which is kind of a bold claim, and I probably should test that. Another thing this ad mentions is it has a no glare finish that'll help cut down on eye fatigue. I've talked about this before, and the finishes on typewriters, the crinkle paint and non-glare finishes were actually designed to help secretaries who would be staring at the typewriter while using it, and apparently the shiny machines had too much glare while using. It would make their eyes hurt. So that's also mentioned in this 1958 ad. There are also a few ads that mention some other things about the key shapes themselves. This ad for an electric typewriter from 1958 also mentions that the keys are finger-shaped, as opposed to maybe the more oval or round shape that you would get on the Smith Coronas, and the more square shape you might get on a Remington or a Royal typewriter. In this electric 1959 ad, they talk about a floating keyboard, which helps you stop typing strain. I guess your fingers getting tired from typing because the keyboard floats. Like wearing magic gloves, Golden Touch gives young fingers easier skill. That's not grammatically correct. And again, all of these ads feature the Golden Touch branding, a lot of gold in the advertisements beyond the gloves, like gold backgrounds, gold finishes on the machines themselves, and then they also have this nice little asterisk next to the Golden Touch branding, and in the bottom corner of all these ads, it does say an Underwood trademark. So they did trademark the Golden Touch branding and how they were advertising their machines as having like this specific Golden Touch feature that makes you feel like you're using magic gloves. Now, these aren't the only ads to use gloves. I actually found these 1955 ads that feature lightweight objects over a Royal keyboard to talk about how easy it is to use the Royal keyboard. And I found this one that features a glove as well, that talks about how the 2 ounces of an empty glove, and that's how much effort it takes to push down a key on their new line of typewriters. So gloves have been featured in other ads, maybe just not as dramatic as the magic Golden Touch gloves of the 1950s and 60s by Underwood. Now, I still didn't understand what made the Golden Touch so special. I mean, they talked about the different features that they had on these machines: easy to use tabs, fast margins, and a lightweight feel while typing, but that really didn't tell me anything about the mechanics of the machine and why it was so special compared to some of the other machines in their line previous to the 1955 through 60-something Underwood machines in their line. So I turned to literature, and I turned to Typewriters by Anthony Casillo, where he does talk a little bit about the Underwood Golden Touch. And I marked it with a Post-it because I have a problem. So when discussing his 1957 Underwood Deluxe Portable, Casillo does go a little bit into the Underwood Golden Touch feel. And what he mentions here is that it was all about the rimless finger form keys designed to naturally fit the ball of a typist's finger. The exclusive Underwood key shape was said to make typing easier, like wearing magic gloves. So the idea here was that it was the shape of the key that actually was the different part here. They do have a little bit of a divot in the middle of them, and they are kind of half moon shaped, where they're kind of circular on the bottom but flat across the top. And that is something that does make the keys look different compared to some of the other shapes. It's almost like a reverse tombstone key. But another thing Casillo mentions in this book specifically is that Underwood didn't really focus that much on making differences between their models. You might have an Underwood Universal and a Leader and a Deluxe all have pretty much the same features in them, and the big differences was in the design or aesthetics of the machine. And I do think that's something that's actually in common with Olivetti when they did merge in 1959 through 1963. They weren't focused so much on making specific features to the different models like you would have in the Smith Corona 5 Series line. As you move up the 5 Series, each machine has something different or specific to get a higher price point. If you look at the Underwood portables that are all happening at this time, they just are designed differently on the outside, but the inside mechanics are pretty much the same. And there are some things that I really did love about my Underwood Golden Touch machines. My favorite thing was that, just like on the Royal Futura, the middle button that you push on the front of those machines does lift the top cover, which still my favorite thing. But I guess the big differentiator here, according to this and some context clues in the advertisements, is the shape of the key itself to make it seem a little bit different. And this wasn't the only time the key shape was mentioned in some of Underwood's advertisements, because if you look at one of my favorite ads done by Underwood, and there's a huge glare on it, the ad that they did promoting Underwood red nail polish in the 1950s, they had a promotion where you as a secretary could write in on your business stationery and get some Underwood red nail polish. And one of the big things they talked about in this advertisement was the rimless keys that were moon-shaped or half-moon-shaped, specifically to help avoid avoid chipping on your nail polish while using the machine. So this is not the first time that Underwood has talked about their key shape as being a specially designed feature. Whether it's to help you feel like you're using magic gloves while typing or to protect your manicure, the Underwood key shape seems to be their big selling factor and design feature compared to some of the other machines out there at the same time. And while I think it's interesting to go in and check out some of the features that they're discussing in these advertisements, again, I think ads are so cool, I do find that these ads make me feel a little bit strange while looking at them, beyond the disembodied golden hands that just make me feel really weird looking at. I do find that a lot of these ads are geared specifically toward a male user, which is interesting because a lot of them feature women's faces and feature females specifically in the viewpoint, and I think it's kind of implied that the gloves are on a female while using the typewriter. But if you look at the verbiage in the actual ads, they're all talking about the secretary who uses it. Get this for your secretary so she can type faster. But in the Underwood Red Nail Polish ad, it's targeting specifically a female audience because it's talking about a promotional item that women would probably use. Underwood Red Nail Polish is talking about protecting their manicure specifically. It also gives them an actionable item at the end of the ad. Write in to get this nail polish, as opposed to buy this typewriter for your secretary so that she can type 26% faster. As they go further later into the decade, 1958 into the 60s, they just use the Golden Touch as more of a branding option, and they show the different models that feature the Golden Touch because that's their trademark, and they don't feature as many full-page color ads featuring women's faces and strange gloves. It turns less into a marketing gimmick and more into just a trademark of the Underwood typewriters. So that is the Underwood Golden Touch feature advertising history. I don't know, it's a little bit confusing. Their main selling point again is those key shape differences, but in general it's just kind of fun to look at advertising from this time and see what to them was their biggest selling factor. And it seems like the idea of having easier action on the keyboard so you could type quicker was really one of their big selling points, and they felt that they achieved that through their rimless keys that are a different shape than a lot of the other keys on the market, but also it would protect your red nails while typing. If you're interested in more Underwood videos, I have linked some of the videos down below that I've done before on Underwood typewriters. I don't have a ton of Underwood typewriters in my collection anymore. I do love them, I think they're really interesting, but for some reason I don't like typing on them as much as some of the other typewriters in my collection, despite having magic features. If you're interested in more typewriter content, I do have some other videos on this YouTube channel, as well as on Instagram at just.my.typewriter. I want to thank you all so much for watching and remind you, you're just my type writer. I have seen a few comments here of people who said that they are always looking for Underwood red nail polish from me, and thank you. Keep up the hunt. We still haven't found it yet. I'm actually convinced that it was never really made. Probably just another marketing gimmick. But maybe someday we'll find something similar.